what's up, everybody? My name is James. Welcome to the BookTalks podcast. It's the podcast where we interview traditionally and self-published authors. What's their book about? What inspired them? What tips and advices they can give to aspiring writers and authors as well. In today's episode, we will be talking to Mr. Lonnie Larson. He is the author of the book Reunited. It's a sci-fi thriller book. Lonnie, welcome to the
Yes,
podcast.
thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. So, before we get started on the book, so I was just reading about your author biography earlier, and it says here that you're born and raised in Minnesota.
That is correct.
Okay, and you did serve as uh, a Marine Corps as well.
Yes, I was in the
In,
Marine
in
Corps.
in the Marine Corps. Thank you for your service, Lonnie. And it seems like you've been a jack of all trades. You're also a firefighter.
Yes, I retired out of the firefighting after 21 years, and then I was a first responder for another few years later. So I was a first responder for about 27 or 28 years,
Wow.
and I, doubled up on that. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I, I served my community when I come back. So
Exactly. And that community is Kellogg.
that is correct. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Kellogg, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Is that a county, sir?
No, Kellogg is just a small city in Wabasha County in Minnesota.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about this book, Lonnie, Reunited. Tell us more about it. What it's all about.
Well, it's sort of a kind of a romantic, you know, love found, love lost type thing, and then like the the main character spends about 300 and some years in and out of suspended animation searching for his wife that he had thought he had lost during a like a battle between some aliens in the planet, her planet that she was from. So basically, towards the end, he finds her, and things work out.
It says here on the author, I mean on the book description, Reunited is more than just a sci-fi thriller. Robert, the
Right.
main character, is a humble man from Earth, and he unexpectedly finds himself involved in an interplanetary romance. When Leia's planet comes under attack and is nearly destroyed by a ruthless enemy, Bob is forced to leave without her and go back to Earth with some refugees. Sometime later, Bob comes to the aid of some of his alien friends and has to leave Earth for a while. Once back home on Earth, Bob finds himself dodging a nosy FBI agent and is forced to leave yet again. Bob spends the next 300 years traveling through space in and out of suspended animation searching for his wife, Leia. Along the way, he makes many friends and few enemies as well, and through it all, he never gives up. There's suspense, danger, and romance as Bob travels through space searching for his wife, and just when you think that it's over, you'll be shocked what happens next. So that's a little bit of a cliffhanger, and all for the right reasons.
Right. Right. Yep.
I'm just
There's a
wondering, yeah, what's your thought process and when you created Reunited, what was the backdrop, so to speak, of this book?
well, well, I was I was actually writing uh, sort of a dialogue script for a television show that was on the air at the time,
Oh,
but then
really?
it went
Okay.
off. Yeah, and so basically it sat on the shelf and it was like a screenplay I would
Ah.
say, and it
Was that a
wasn't very
local television show?
no, it's a syndicated show,
Oh,
and
really? Okay.
yeah, it was, but I never got to submit it, and but so it was sitting on the shelf for many years
Mm-hmm.
when I received a phone call from from a publishing company, and they were basically looking for uh, books to publish, and
Mm-hmm.
so I said I had one, and but they told me the parameters, so I had to sit down and rewrite it, and then I sent
Mm-hmm.
them a copy, and then and then it took a little while, but it was
Mm-hmm.
printed and published,
Mm-hmm.
and I got all the all the I got all the copyrights and
Mm-hmm.
ISBN numbers and all that stuff. So, and then they printed up a few copies, and so that's basically how it started.
You know what? That's very interesting because normally, it should be a manuscript or a published book first before it becomes a screenplay. But in your case, it was originally a screenplay, and then you were able to mitigate it to make it to a manuscript or a book format. And you mentioned that it took a while. How long did it took you to, and what was the process then? Turning scripts into a manuscript.
Well, during the script part of it, you just had the dialogue, and then you had
Uh-huh.
when you write, it's like if you ever see a play, you'll have the characters,
Yes.
then
Yeah.
they'll have their dialogue, and it'll be actions, what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. So I had to take all of that that I had wrote as a screenplay, then I had to turn around and then I had to write that in as the book and their dialogue. So basically, so all of the actions, all of the, you know, fading in and out, all that stuff had to be converted into the book that you read so that it flowed better, so that you know,
Did you had editors sift through your stuff?
no, I did not have any editors at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just went over the book countless times,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that making sure that it was done pretty close to the way I wanted it to be done, and then I submitted it to this first publishing company,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically published it and sent me several copies, a part of the program. I got like 5 or 6 copies, and I looked it over, and it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the entire book is maybe 100 pages,
Uh-huh.
and
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and a wonderful cover, I might say as well. Um, and I'm just curious. When will this be like a book series that you plan for? When obviously this is the first book, right?
right, that's correct. I do have uh, let's see this the book that Reunited, that pretty much takes goes from the start to 300 years.
Uh-huh.
Then you have a companion book or whatever you want to call it. It's going to be, hopefully I'll be able to get that published soon. And
Mm-hmm.
what it does then is it documents that whole 300 years,
Oh, okay.
and in and out. He's got part of that. It continues, you know, so it's not bad. It's
Mm,
so basically what it does is it explains away
mm,
it helps to explain it. So
exactly.
hopefully hopefully I'll be able to get that printed out, and
Mm,
then that will be like a basically
like a
what would
sequel
you
of
call
some
it?
sort.
Yeah, sequel type thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So it's the story inside the story, so to speak.
Correct. Correct.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just curious, when did you
Right.
realize that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, see, that was never really my intention.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting there. I was very very interested in this television shows, and I know that at time and again, people can submit, screenplays or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they send them to the studios, and if they
Mm-hmm.
get lucky and get printed, then
Yeah.
they get their name in the credits.
Yeah.
So that was basically I never really planned on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then when the first publishing company contacted me and asked if I had anything, and I said, well, yeah, I do, and
Mm-hmm.
I then they explained to me how many pages it had to be minimum of, and format and all that stuff. So then I turned around and I rewrote it to meet their guidelines, and then I sent them the copy, and then then they printed up the galley, and then I did all the corrections, and then when we got everything all done, then they printed it, and it's basically took off from there.
Okay. And because that's normally, back in the day, that's, I think, the traditional way is for you to get noticed by like a traditional publishers. But nowadays, it's, a do-it-yourself type of publication, and there are highly notable books. And if I may say as well, sci-fi books is basically the mainstream in the book industry. It has a lot of it has, so to speak, cult following, as they say. Um, where do you get your information or ideas, like on what's like the setup of the main characters? Because when I was browsing about your book, I can't help but compare it to somewhat like a Star Trek kind of adventure type of book.
Right,
Where do you
right.
get? Yeah,
It's it's similar, but you can't actually delve into that because that's copyrighted material. So
exactly. Yeah.
what what this is, it's just like, I mean, I don't know too many Star Trek episodes where
Mm-hmm.
they plunk somebody up out of out of the past,
uh,
but but it's got your interplanetary romantic type stuff, and I
uh,
would assume that because of the way that a lot of the episodes of the old Star Trek,
mm,
flying through space, and the old Captain Kirk was always trying to make out with the aliens. But
exactly.
nothing like that. But you
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Well, in all fairness, what makes your book stand out is that's why I was asking earlier if you have some editors sift over the materials, because on its raw form, it's very enticing. The way you progress with the story makes the impact for a regular audience like me is that you keep on wanting to go to the next page, and this, I mean, know more, discover more about
right,
the main characters, and that is definitely a big impact for an audience, and that's ultimately, that's going to be the goal for every author, is just to keep them wanting for more in page wise, story wise, right? um
right.
I'm curious though, what do you, I mean, you mentioned that you're a firefighter, you've served your community, also on the author description that you were a mayor, you used to be a mayor of
Yes,
Kellogg. Are,
I was the mayor of Kellogg.
uh-huh.
Yes, and I was back in 2000. I did one term as a mayor, and then I was also uh, elected as the commander of our American Legion post. I did that for 4 years.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I pretty much kept myself involved in this community as best I
Mm-hmm.
could.
Which leads me to my next question. What do you do when you're not writing? Right, like right
Well,
now. Mm-hmm.
I just basically I would work, but right now I don't work, so I'm just sit around and think of stories to write.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and rightfully so, because I think that definitely the story needs to have a sequel, or it should be a book series, because normally that's the drill for
Right.
science fiction books. Sometimes it comes in a trilogy, but of course you need to take your time. Did you any had what would they say? They would call it authors or writers block. Like sometimes when you're trying to force how to progress the story of the book, did that ever happen to you?
Well, it never really occurred during the writing of that particular one because it was a screenplay. I just had to rewrite it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then
Mm-hmm.
and then this the sequel to this book, since the main characters and everything was already established,
Yeah.
pretty much. Then what we did was we just went through that. So if I ever got into a let's say if I ever was sitting down and I was writing, and I ever got into a situation where it was just hard to think of something, I
Mm-hmm.
just I just would I would just you know shut her down and then come back later and
Mm-hmm.
take a break from it. But
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, um, I also I also write um, I also write small like short stories. Only
Mm-hmm.
some of the short stories aren't so short anymore. But it's
Okay.
it's more like erotic. It's like erotic
Ah.
fantasy. So,
Mm-hmm.
but and those I can sit down and I can sit down and I can crank one of them out in about an hour.
Wow, okay. You should compile that, and you would be surprised that there's also a lot of, I mean, 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
That's an erotic, sensual book, and
Right.
it that basically originally that was a self-published book until it got picked up by a bigger publishing house. So that's
Right. Right. Yep.
ultimately the
Yep.
goal. And I was talking to an author like 3 days ago, also with the sci-fi science fiction book, and she said that the one of the challenging things in with the in continuing like when you decide to go on a to continue the book two, book three, trilogy series. The hardest part is to make the scenes, the scenarios, the characters be consistent
Right.
um, to the first book, of course, because basically the first book sets the standard, sets the tone of the upcoming books, right? So I think
Right.
that's normally. I
And
hope you will not encounter that kind of challenge in the future.
no, see, I've got the sequel
Mm-hmm.
already wrote. It's
Okay.
currently it's like several hundred, probably close to 400 or 500 pages,
Mm-hmm.
and it might be a little bit long for a sequel. And I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking about I was thinking about maybe making a trilogy out of it, and somehow you get the first book Reunited, then I have the second book that comes out, and then I I can split that book into two parts, and then
Perfect.
create a third part. So then we have like a series, just three. They can bang bang bang, and they can read
Mm-hmm.
the whole, from get to start, and
Mm-hmm.
then they read the first book. That pretty much sets the stage. The second book goes into more detail about the lives of the characters, the main characters in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and then hopefully the last part will gives a finish, sort of a ending to the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Have you done some uh I'm aware that your link is also in partnership with book reviews, certain book reviews like Trifecta book reviews, Blue Ink book
Mm.
reviews, US review books. Have you done those for this book?
No, I haven't. I haven't done any reviews and any book reviews or anything like that yet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, and then, like I said, I don't. I'm really not up onto that, so I don't know, too much about where to start. So I'm going to leave that up to Lori.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Hope you can help me out on that.
Because she did mention to me that of course you do have a website for your book, and you're doing this podcast now, but one of the what one of the service that I would normally recommend is to there are hundreds if not thousands of sci-fi books that's already been out on Amazon, and the goal here, Lon, is to make your book stand out, not just blend in, right? So
Right.
book reviews would be one of the most essential to put some distinction that you're not just like by doing some book reviews, that legitimizes you in a way. I don't know if that's the right word, but that legitimizes you as an author, because there's like other entities who would be able to somewhat like affirm how good your book is, right?
Right.
And this is not just a simple, romance poetry book. This is a sci-fi thriller book. So, that's one of the roadmaps that I would suggest for the book. I'm just curious as well. When you were writing this, you've mentioned originally this was a screenplay, and then it got turned into a manuscript. What was one of the most surprising things that you've learned in creating this book, Lonnie?
Well, there was a lot of there's a lot of little small details that you have to make sure you get taken care of, and so you don't just write something down and expect it to get published. You
Mm-hmm.
gotta work at it for quite a while, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's not it's really not all that easy. A person can sit down and write all these stories and put them down put them in a computer file and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But if you don't have an outlet for it, they just sit
Exactly.
there and nobody gets to see it. So you got to
Exactly.
find outlets, and you got to know certain areas or whatever to and get them out there, and hopefully you'll find somebody that can maybe print it out or even just review it on a website or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you had different 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 sites where
Mm-hmm.
you could download a book, and even if it's a small one, so people
Mm-hmm.
can read it, and then if people can start reading it, and they'll start to comment. Hopefully, then you'll get they'll start to look for your name per se,
Exactly.
but and they'll Google your name and say, hey, what
Mm.
anything new, and then they'll see
Exactly.
something new, and hopefully then that might catch the attention of a traditional publisher. They'll I'm sure they keep their eyes to the on the websites and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
if they keep seeing that there's this particular author that keeps coming up, they're gonna
Exactly.
start they're gonna start to check it out, and hopefully it might pick something up that way too.
And one of the so-called shortcuts of these traditional publishing companies do is they sort it out based on the blurb, or what critics are saying about the book, and book reviews would be one of those entities that they would rely on. So but I'm just curious though, did any of your family members did they have I'm sure they've read the book, and what does do when what do they think of it, of your writing?
Well, they think it's a waste of time.
Oh, really?
Oh
What
yeah,
makes
yeah,
what,
yeah.
that's a surprising answer.
Well,
What makes them
you
say
gotta.
that? Yeah.
Well, they figure it's better to get a regular job and just you know put the pencil and the paper away.
Really? Okay. Well, reading books, writing is not for everybody.
Right,
But
exactly.
just because it's not for it's not for everybody, doesn't mean that you're not supposed to do what you do. I mean, you're not gonna be doing this if you don't love this, I assume, right? And
Right,
the I would always say to our the authors I get to deal with every day that you're basically the unsung heroes with all of the advent of the technologies that you can read everything, see everything online right now. You authors like you, Lonnie, are the unsung heroes of printed materials,
right.
right? So uh I'm just curious, aside from science fiction thriller books, are you also interested in other genres, and do you have an eye for that? I mean, are you eyeing for a different genre?
Well, it's science fiction is sort of it's a catch-all, but I do
Mm-hmm.
have the erotic erotic
Oh yeah.
fantasy, but that's really hardcore, So it's
Mm-hmm.
not for everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
then there are other um, genres that have to deal with less erotic type stuff, but more more family type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not just going to be science fiction, but
Okay.
and I I do have I do did have way back in the early days I I wrote a couple of poems and I do have one of them that got put in an anthology, but
Oh,
that was
okay.
many years ago. So
So it's like
and I
basically like you
yes
submitted it as part of the anthology for a particular poetry book.
right yes
Uh-huh.
they there was a thing on the I was surfing through the computer one time and this was back in like 2003 when I come
Mm.
across poetry website and they were looking for you could get you know $25 submit a poem and whatever you could win.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
what I did was
Mm-hmm.
I banged out a poem and I submitted it and then of course nothing happened. But
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden I got a letter saying that they wanted to know if it would be okay if I put that poem in an anthology. I said sure, I don't care. So
Mm. Okay.
and they did. They
Mm-hmm.
put it in a book with a bunch of other poems.
Mm-hmm. And talking about um the submission that you've made, um I'm also curious to know what would be your suggestions to help someone become a better writer?
Well, would main thing would be to don't listen to the naysayers that telling you not to write because there's going to be a lot of
Amen.
those
Amen to
and
that.
yeah, and there's going to be a lot of negatives
Mm,
and just take a few hours a day or whatever and sit down and even if you just sit there and don't write word, just take some time to think about it because when it does start to come, pretty quick you'll have a half a book wrote in no time.
exactly. Well, to the naysayers,
Yeah,
I like that. You can't stop people from saying things about you, right? It's not your
right.
responsibility either to change their minds. You only have
Oh,
to keep on doing what you do best for as long as you're not, hurting anyone, then there's no need
right,
for you to explain yourself, right?
right. Yep. And
And yeah,
and then those so-called naysayers will have a change of tune when they start seeing you raking in,
ex-
thousands of dollars every month because your books are selling.
exactly.
Then they'll look and they'll say like, wait a second, maybe that wasn't such a bad idea.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I've experienced that myself. It doesn't not it that it doesn't only apply to to book audience, but in life, in life in general, right?
Right,
How many times did we encounter people questioning us, questioning our existence, well, looking down on us, only to find out, as they say, naysayers are just confused followers. When they see you grow, and they, you, like you've mentioned, when they see you getting all those thousands of dollars from the royalty, and they start believing in you. The world is ironic.
yes, exactly. Yep. At first
Right.
they don't, at first they don't like what you're doing, and they try to get you to quit, and then pretty quick it's like, well, that wasn't too bad, I guess. So
Exactly.
then they can't wait, and they pretty much then basically, like you said, they can't wait to read your next writings. So yeah, so
Exactly. And I
yep,
think that's also the sign for you, Lonnie, to just continue what you're doing. And I'm here to, not only and not that you need to hear this from me, but you're doing exactly just fine, and just continue what you're doing. You have no idea, the impact that you're generating, because for sci-fi books, young adults, there's a wide array or margin of audience for this book. And no need to mention that successful movies once came from, a published material. Like, say, for example,
Correct.
right? Harry Potter books. I mean, and I could continue on, but uh, please do invite our potential book buyers and listeners to this podcast to grab a copy of Reunited.
The very original printer was Author House, and I don't know if they still have access to that or not. But um, from what I understand, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. Google
Mm-hmm.
search. You can search it on Google. Just
Mm-hmm.
type in the name and like Reunited and the whatever, and then the author's name, and it should come up, and it should lead you to places where you can order it through. I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming you order it through Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
and right now, and we're working on. Hopefully, we get this website up and running. We'll
Mm-hmm.
be able to have links on the website to where then you could just order it through the website, and it'll go right to the it goes right to the printer, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
basically right now I believe it's what they call print on demand. So
Yes.
you order
Mm-hmm.
the book, and then it gets printed, and it gets shipped out to the so
Yeah.
the whole process
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't take very long.
Mm-hmm. So you have an upcoming website, and we'll be putting that as part of the advertising campaign. I believe that Reunited is available on UR Link Print and Media, and don't you worry, we'll make this episode. The goal of this podcast is to, once your book, the UR Link version of your book is out, that's gonna be the time that we'll make this podcast available as well, so that when they browse, when they listen to this podcast, the book that they will be able to check into is the newly revised cover, and the that's going to be the UR Link print and media version.
Correct.
All right,
Yep.
Lonnie,
Yep.
I thank you so much for your time. This has been a very good conversation. I'm inspired by you because, not that this is of a big deal, but there are people who would question you along the way. I think that's my takeaway for this interview. You've made it. You're a published author. It's despite of the fact that people around you would not really be supportive, but it's okay. Yeah, again, as they say, as long as it makes you happy, it doesn't need to make sense to anyone else.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Thank you
Yep.
so
As
much for
long as
your time.
yep. Yep. Well,
Uh,
I
mm-hmm,
appreciate that.
mm-hmm. And I would want to talk to you more about the upcoming books eventually. I know that we'll be talking. I'll be talking to you very soon regarding those, but no pressure. Just take your time. Okay.
Right. Yep. I have to like when we get this, if we can get this book out on the shelves, so to speak, then send them the I'll send them the file on the sequel part and see what they can do for that, and then hopefully they'll like what they read, and then they'll be
Mhm.
able to put that in print as well.
Thank you, Lonnie. Again, the book Reunited by Lonnie C. Larson. Thank you for listening to the Book Talks podcast. This has been James. Thanks, Lonnie.
Thank you, James.
Bye bye.
Bye now.